We're making this tape because various clients of ours in the silver market have found that silver conspiracy theories are a giant distraction to their operation. We don't expect to be able to convince everybody that these conspiracies don't exist, but we'd like to clear the air for the vast number of ordinary investors and explain to them how the silver market works. The current round of conspiracy theories really began to emerge in the late 1980s. At that time, it was initially alleged that there was a conspiracy among bullion banks, major silver dealers, to push the silver price lower and to keep it lower. It was hypothesized that there were large silver short positions on the COMEX silver futures contract, and that these were naked short positions that were used to manipulate the price and keep it lower. Over time, the allegations have changed. Many people have come to understand that there is no evidence to suggest that there has been a large ongoing conspiracy among bullion banks to keep the price down. Nowadays, the silver conspiracy theorists generally allege that there's an undue concentration of short positions on the COMEX silver futures contract among a handful of dealers. They don't necessarily allege that they're using this to drive the price down. They're simply saying that there are large concentrations of short positions among 3 or 4 companies on the COMEX. If you look at the data on the COMEX silver futures and options contracts, you will see that, generally speaking, large commercial COMEX trading companies that are market makers in the silver market, have large and consistently large short positions. On a net basis, they've been running about 300 or 400 million ounces a year. That seems large, but when you understand how the silver market works, this is a billion ounce a year physical silver market, what you realize is that it's not that the short position on the COMEX is large, it's actually small compared to what it could be, and one starts wondering where the other short positions are. The answer is that they are in the London market and the over-the-counter dealer market. Bullion banks and dealers stand as market makers. They're ready to buy and sell regardless of whether the price is rising or falling, and that's their job. A market maker has to give a bid and an ask price, the price at which it will buy and the price at which it will sell. The caller then has the right to either put the metal to the person, sell it to them at their purchase price, or to buy it from them at their ask price. These market makers will sometimes wind up absorbing large amounts of silver if there are more sellers than buyers in the market. They hedge those purchases by shorting the market. The most efficient way for them to hedge their purchases is to find somebody who wants to buy it and to offset their purchase agreements with sales agreements. If they can't do that immediately, they will go to the COMEX futures and options market, and they will hedge their long commitments to buy with short commitments to sell. In addition to that, the COMEX is a futures market. It has 2 basic functions. One is to provide hedging mechanisms for industrial participants in the silver market. The second is that it provides investors and speculators an opportunity to take positions in these markets. If you look at the data, the commitment of traders reports that the CFTC publishes on a weekly basis, you'll see that while the large commercial participants tend to be net short, the large non-commercial or investor-oriented participants tend to be net long, and consistently net long. Now, you need to understand why the dealers are short on the COMEX. As I said, these positions are offsets of long positions in other markets. In many cases, they're not spot purchases. They're forward purchases. A producer will go to a dealer and say, I would like to lock in today's silver price at today's price or at today's price plus the forward carry over the next 2, 4, 5 years. The dealer will give him a quote. If the producer sells forward, the dealer has to hedge that exposure. Otherwise, it could go bankrupt very quickly. That's the generation of a net long position on the dealer's book. The dealer then turns around and hedges that with a short position either in the London market or on the COMEX. Another problem is the fallacy of delivery. The conspiracy theorists claim that someday all of the short positions will have to be called in and there will not be enough metal to deliver into this. They misunderstand that because most physicals, forwards, and futures and options can be settled for cash. Now the silver market can be overwhelmed by buyers or sellers, and you can see the price spike up and down sharply. But the fact of the matter is that in such a situation, most of those contracts, futures and forwards, can be and will be settled for cash. That means that the price of silver can spike sharply higher or lower in a run on the market. It doesn't mean that the market will break because there simply isn't enough metal around. At some point, the price gets high enough and the people who have those contracts settle for cash. The CFTC monitors 60 futures and options markets for which it collects commitment of traders data and issues commitment of traders reports. Across these markets, one will find that a handful of financial intermediaries, banks, brokers, and dealers, represent the bulk of futures transactions. That should not be surprising to anyone. Simply put, over the course of the 90s and much of this decade, commodities futures broking did not make sense. It was a very costly and unprofitable business. Many banks and dealers got out of the silver market as they did out of other commodities markets, leaving very few companies as major market makers. If you look at those 60 markets that the CFTC collects data on, you will find that silver ranked 30th in terms of the percentage of open interest held by the 4 largest gross short position holders. The reality of the matter is that the concentration of silver short positions in the hands of a handful of market makers is not atypical across commodity markets, and it's not unusual. First, there's no evidence of unduly large positions. What we see in the silver market is typical of commodity markets, and in fact is not all that out of line with larger, more liquid financial markets. There also is no unusual concentration of positions in silver compared to other markets. There's no evidence of coordinated efforts to manipulate prices across numerous companies over several decades. There's no logical rationale for such a conspiracy. No one has ever been able to explain how someone could profit by perpetually repressing silver prices and keeping them low with a large short position. The price behavior in silver also is not atypical. Silver prices have behaved in line with other prices, not only gold, platinum, and palladium, but other commodities as well. There's no evidence in the silver price to suggest that the silver price has been manipulated on an ongoing basis.